Hello, my name is Brendan and I'm from Australia. Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join me on this exciting journey. I'm so glad to have you here. Six Little Ducklings by KATHARINE, PYLE, 1863-1938. "I'll race you to the big burdock, quick," said Squdge one day as he and the others headed to the river with Mother Duck. "Okay." "Let's all race," shouted Buff, who could run almost as fast as her brothers. "All right," said Queek, "but we should give Fluffy and Curlytail a head start since they can't run as fast as us." So Fluffy and Curlytail went ahead, and then Squdge yelled, "Go!" They all took off running. "Wait for me at the burdocks," their mother called. "Don't go to the river without me." But the ducklings were too focused on racing to answer her. All the little ducks reached the burdocks around the same time, though Squdge was slightly ahead. Out of breath, they were happy to sit in the shade and cool off while waiting for their mother. Suddenly, they heard a strange scratching and rustling sound from behind the burdocks, along with a cluck, cluck, cluck. "What's that, Squdge?" whispered Queek.
"I don't know," Squdge replied.
"I'm scared," said Buff. "It sounds strange. Let's go back and find Mother." The ducklings were about to run when a big, grey, feathery bird with sharp eyes and a beak appeared from behind the burdock. She was followed by a group of little fluffy yellow chicks that seemed to be her babies. When the chicks saw the ducklings, they stopped and stared at them in surprise. "Cluck, cluck," called the mother hen. "What do we have here? I believe they're ducklings." As Squdge started to approach her, she flapped up her feathers angrily. "Don't come any closer. If you do, I'll peck you. I don't like strange animals near my babies." The ducklings were scared by her angry looks. They've had to run away when they saw their mother coming around a bend in the path. When Mother Duck spotted a stranger talking to her children, she rushed over. As she got closer, she quacked happily. "Oh, Mrs. Hennypenny," she exclaimed. "Is that you? Where did you come from?" "Well, if it isn't Mrs. Duck," replied the hen. "I took the kids out for a walk, and we ended up further than I thought. I never expected to find you here." The two birds were so happy to see each other that they both started talking at once, asking questions and giving answers whilst the little ones listened in wonder. "I guess you're still at the farm," said the duck. "And these are your little ones. They look so nice." "You have lovely children too," said the hen, pleased. "They look just like you." "They're generally good," the duck replied, "but sometimes they can be naughty and I have to scold them a bit. But how are things at the farm? How are the geese, turkeys and guinea fowls? Is old Mr. Teege still around? Oh, he was such a grumpy dog." The hen nodded. "Yes, he's still around, and he's even grumpier than before. Just the other day, Mrs. Speckledy Hen accidentally went too close to his doghouse, and he jumped out and pulled out a whole mouthful of tail feathers from her." "Oh my," gasped the duck. "Wasn't that terrible? What did Mr. Rooster say?" "Why," he said. At that moment, the duck noticed all the little ones standing around with their mouths open, listening intently. "Now, children, don't just stand there listening," she called. "You know I don't like you to eavesdrop when grown-ups are talking. Go down to the river and take these little chicks with you, but don't go in the water until I get there. You might catch them a tadpole or two." "Yes, go ahead," said the hen. "We'll be there shortly. Just make sure you don't get your feet wet." The ducklings thought it was funny to say, "Don't get your feet wet." But they and the chicks happily ran down the path toward the river while two birds followed more slowly. When the little ones reached the river, Squdge, who liked a little chicken named Bright Eyes, hurried to a shallow spot where the tadpoles lived. He caught a nice fat one and brought it to her in his beak. And instead of taking it, Bright Eyes looked very disgusted. "Yuck!" she exclaimed. "Get that away from me, it's gross." "Gross," Squdge said in surprise. "But it's good. Haven't you ever eaten a tadpole?" "No, and I don't want to eat one now either," she replied. All the other chicks agreed, so Squdge ate the tadpole himself, and he thought it tasted delicious. I have an idea, said Quick. I bet Mother wouldn't mind if we went into the shallow water and had a swim. It's deep enough as long as we hold our legs up. But we don't know how to swim, cried the chicks. Not knowing how to swim, the ducklings could hardly believe it. What do you do when you go in the water, they asked. We don't go in the water, the chicks replied. The ducklings stared at them with pity and surprise. They had never heard of anyone not going in the water. Then Squudge had a bright idea. I know, he exclaimed. Let's give the chicks a ride on the river. We'll get a big leaf and use it as a boat, and then the chicks can climb on it while we pull it. The chicks weren't very enthusiastic about the idea. They were scared. But the ducklings were so excited that the chicks hardly knew how to say no. Squudge found a large leaf, and he and the others nipped it off with their sharp beaks and pulled it down to the river. Now hop on, they shouted joyfully. But we're scared, the chicks whimpered. Oh, come on, it won't hurt you. You'll love it. It's so much fun. Timidly, the chicks stepped onto the leaf and huddled together in the middle while the ducklings pulled it out onto the stream. Faster, faster, cried Squudge, holding the stem with his beak and swimming as hard as he could. Let's go around this rock. The water splashed over the leaf and the chicks shrieked in fear. A moment later, the boat hit a ledge and then tilted over, dumping the chicks into the water. Oh no, cried Buff. Look what we've done. The ducklings quickly rushed to help the chicks, and by pushing and pulling, they managed to get them onto a rock where they were safe. The chickens were soaking wet, terrified and confused. Oh no, they cried. We're going to drown. We just want to go home. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. The ducklings watched, feeling helpless and unsure of what to do. Suddenly, a shout came from the riverbank. My babies! My babies! The duck and hen had reached the edge of the river, and the hen saw her chicks stranded on a rock, drenched and trembling with fear. What am I going to do? How will I get them back? She cried in panic. Don't worry, the duck said calmly. I'll bring them back. But how? There's no way you can do it. Of course I can, the duck reassured her. I'll swim out to them, and they can ride on my back. I'll bring them back one by one. But what if they fall off? I'm sure they will. They won't. Just watch. The duck slid into the water and swam over to the rock. At first, the chicks were scared to climb onto her back, afraid they might fall into the water. But soon, Bright Eyes gathered the courage to hop on and nestled against Mother Duck's neck. Once secure, the duck glided through the water and safely brought Bright Eyes back to shore. Seeing this, the other two chicks couldn't wait for their turn. They eagerly scrambled onto the duck's back and were soon safely carried across too. The hen was overwhelmed with relief and gratitude when her chicks were safely back on dry land. If it weren't for you, they would have drowned, she said tearfully. Yes, but if it weren't for my children, they wouldn't have been out, the duck replied. She wanted the hen to bring the chicks to the hollow tree to rest and dry off, but the hen refused. All she wanted now was to get her chicks home safely. She made up her mind that she would never ever leave the farmyard again, at least not until the chicks were old enough to take care of themselves. So, the two birds said their goodbyes and parted ways. Mother Duck took her ducklings home without letting them swim again. They had been very naughty and disobedient, and as a punishment she told them they wouldn't be allowed to go to the river for 3 whole days. That was a terrible blow for the little ducks, and they almost cried about it. But they realised it could have been worse. Mother Duck could have banned them from the river for a whole week, and they had been bad enough to deserve that. One day, Mother Duck woke up bright and early, put on her bonnet and shawl, and took a market basket under her wing. Now, children, I'm going to the market, she said. Don't wander too far from home while I'm gone, and don't go down to the river, and don't talk to any strange animals. All the little ducklings replied, No, Mother. Then the old duck donned her bonnet and shawl, took her basket on her arm, and set off. For a while after she left, the little ducks played near the hollow tree. Then they wandered a bit further and started to see how far they could go without losing sight of home. I wish Mother would hurry back, said Squudge finally. I'm getting hungry. Wouldn't a tadpole or some watercress taste good right now? Definitely, replied Quick. Even a beetle would be great if we could find one. Just as Quick said that, a bright, long-tailed fly zipped by over Buff's head. Catch it, Buff, shouted Quick. Buff jumped, but missed it, only grazing its tail with his beak. "Catch it!" Squudge yelled, bounding after it, and "Catch it, catch it!" the others echoed, running after him as fast as they could. They completely forgot their mother's warnings. On and on they went, leaping and running, sometimes tripping over one another in their excitement. Finally their chase took them onto a road, where the fly rose straight up over their heads, soaring higher and higher until it vanished in the sunlit sky. The ducklings stood there, staring after it hungrily. "Hey there, you little ones. What do you think you're doing?" a rough voice called out. The ducklings jumped at the sound. In the road stood a scruffy, bold-looking, half-grown chicken. "What are you doing?" he repeated. If you please, sir, we were trying to catch a fly," Quick replied timidly. "A fly? Why would you want to catch a fly?" "We thought we could eat it." "Eat it? A fly? Don't you have any corn or bread or anything like that at home?" Quick shook his head. "We don't know what corn or bread is." "Don't know what they are? At the farmyard where I live, the farmer's wife comes out twice a day and feeds us all we can eat. Sometimes she gives us a dish of curds too, or a meat bone to pick. Though usually we have to share our meat bones with the watchdog. He's a good friend of mine, old Mr. Tige. He'd let me have his bones any time I wanted." "Mr. Tige," exclaimed Squudge. "That's the name of the watchdog at the farm where our mother used to live. Where's your farmyard?" "Oh, over there," said the chicken, pointing with his wing. "Who's your mother anyway?" The ducklings told him who their mother was, where they lived, and all about themselves. In turn, they asked him about the farmyard. "I'm sure that's where our mother used to live," said Buff. "Oh, how I wish we could see it." "Well, you can. Come with me and I'll show it to you." "All right," Squudge and Creak shouted excitedly. The other 4 ducklings hesitated, unsure if they should join in. But Squudge and Creak were so eager and unwilling to turn back that eventually the others agreed to follow them to the farmyard. The scruffy chicken took the lead and they all followed behind. As they walked, the chicken talked about himself in the farmyard. He boasted at how much the farmer's wife liked him, his friend the turkey, and old Tige. "Honestly," he exclaimed, "I can't imagine what Tige would do if something happened to me. I bet he'd just break his chain and come looking for me." The ducklings thought the chicken must be quite important if everyone cared for him so much. After a while, they arrived at a tall wooden fence. The chicken squeezed through a hole and the ducklings followed, entering the farmyard. Once inside, they looked around in amazement. Not far from them, a hen was scratching the ground for her chicks. At first they thought it was the hen they had seen by the river, but they noticed this one was larger and darker. A rooster on a pile of manure crowed loudly, making the ducklings jump. "What was that?" Squudge asked, his voice trembling. "That? Oh, that's nothing. Just a rooster crowing. Haven't you ever heard one before?" In the sunny corner, 4 large, moving creatures stood tall on thick leaves. "What are those?" Squudge asked, pointing at them. "Those are cows. Haven't you seen cows before?" "Oh my, you really don't know much," the chicken said dismissively. The little ducklings gazed at the cows in awe. Each massive hoof could crush them like bugs or tadpoles if it stepped on them. "And where's your friend, Mr. Tige?" "Old Tige," the chicken said, hesitating. "Well, he might be asleep. If he is, I wouldn't want to wake him. He barks so much at night that he gets tired during the day. But can't we just see what he looks like?" "Well, come on. Maybe I can show you. He lives in the doghouse over there." The chicken led the way towards the doghouse, and the ducklings followed. He walked on tiptoe, whispering for them to be quiet. They reached the doghouse and peeked around the corner. Sure enough, old Tige lay in the sunshine, fast asleep. He was a big, fierce-looking brindle dog. Occasionally, he twitched in the air and moved a paw in his dreams, which frightened the ducklings. Seeing the dog asleep made the chicken bolder. "Yes, there he is, just as I told you," he said. "Do you see that bone by his nose? If he were awake, I'd ask him and give it to you. I know if he would if I asked him." Just then, the big dog woke up and opened one eye slightly, but the chicken didn't notice. He was too busy bragging to the ducklings. The dog wasn't really friends with the chicken at all. In fact, he hated it. The chicken was always sneaking up and trying to steal his food. He'd tried many times to catch it, but it was always managed to stay just out of reach. But now the chicken was so close that it seemed like with one leap he could grab it. Very quietly, he gathered himself without the chicken noticing. Then suddenly, with a leap and a growl, he lunged at the chicken. He would have caught it too if only his chain had been a little longer, but he only managed to catch a few of its feathers. The chicken let out a wild squawk and fled towards the hole in the fence, wings flapping. The ducklings tumbled after, nearly scared out of their wits. The chicken squeezed through the hole and rushed down the road, with the ducklings squeezing through and running right behind. On and on the chicken ran, and the ducklings followed. For all they knew, the dog might have broken its chain and was right on their heels. Eventually, they reached the river and couldn't go any further. But it was a part of the river the ducklings had never seen before. The chicken turned on them, angry. "Why don't you go home?" he snapped. "Why are you following me? I don't want you around. Go home, I tell you." "But we don't know how," the ducklings cried, and Curly-tail began to sob. "Well, I don't care where you go. Just stop following me, because I've had enough." "We won't follow you if you just tell us how to get home," they pleaded. "No, I'm not telling you. I'm going back to the farm. It's probably feeding time now. Don't you dare follow me or I'll peck you." The chicken was angry because the ducklings had seen him scared and realized he wasn't a friend of the dog after all. "Oh, what are we going to do? We're lost," the ducklings cried. But the chicken ignored them. He gave them one last scornful look, stuck his wings in his imaginary pockets, and marched away up the road, leaving them behind. The poor little ducklings were feeling completely miserable. They all cried bitter tears. Even Squdge began to sob. "Oh, if only we could go home," they cried. "We'd never run away again. We'd always be good, obedient little ducklings." Suddenly, Queequeg stopped crying for a moment, looked up the river and shouted with joy. "Look, look!" he yelled. The ducklings stared through their tears, and then they began flapping their wings and cheering. There, calmly sailing down the river, wearing her shawl and bonnet, with a basket on her arm, was her own dear mother. "Mother, mother!" they shouted together. "Here we are, come quick!" Their mother spotted them and steered towards the river bank, barely able to believe her eyes. "Children, what on earth are you doing here?" she asked. "Oh, we ran away and got lost, but if you'll take us home, we promise we'll never be naughty little ducks again." They had indeed been very naughty for running away after being told not to, but they looked so scared and sad that their mother didn't have the heart to scold them. "Well, we'll talk about it later," she said. "I think you've been punished enough by being so frightened. Slip into the river and I'll take you home." The ducklings slid into the water and sailed alongside their mother. Before long, they saw their home and a hollow tree in the distance. How thankful and happy the little ducklings were. "Mother," said Squdge solemnly, "I'm never going to be naughty again. I'll always do exactly what you tell me." And all the other ducklings agreed. "Well, I'm glad to hear that," their mother said. "What a happy family we'll be if I never have to scold you again."